All right, so back here on the 1978 Toyota pickup, it's just going to be a short update. I've been working on this Mustang 2 conversion. So, you saw last time, big old pile of goodies and just emptying the boxes and trying to get stuff put on the truck. Been doing real well with level. You can see, 10th of a degree there, and 2/10, and depending on where I rock it or whatever, it's about 1/10 also the other direction. So doing real well there. I got the cross member in, just tacked in place. I haven't boxed anything in yet. And then, that lower control arm, I haven't put the gussets or anything on that spacer that needs to get welded in. That's just held in place by the bolt temporarily. And then the top hat. So one thing that was, definitely different for this car is that the inner frame width is super narrow. And so, this is meant for a vehicle with, a much longer frame width. And so, what I had to end up doing here is typically this backside of the cross member, you'd notch the backside, and then where this slopes upward would sit on the inside of the frame. This line here is my spindle height that I'm shooting for, and so typically that notched part on the the angled part on this side would sit flush here on the inside of the frame, but I actually had to notch it on the inside here, and then I got a bunch of overhang on the back side because the frame is so narrow. You can also see that it's got a bunch of bends in it. And so like right where I have the spindle, again, I've been marking center everywhere, where the spindle is, that, location, it kind of sits in a bend. And so, it's not even on, this back side and on the front side. And so, just been taking a whole lot of time to make sure that I get all that stuff close in order to make sure I don't have any weird gaps so I can get that welded in okay. And so, been doing pretty good. I mean, the gap that I got in there is like, a 1/16 or so, which is actually really good for penetration. And so, been doing well with level and square and center and all that good stuff. Then on the top hat, so I haven't done the passenger side yet, but the driver's side, you see my scribbles all over the place trying to keep track of measurements. Because this top hat, typically, because the frames are a lot wider, this inside edge would be like on the inside of the frame rail, typically. But because, my frame is so narrow, I had to weld in a plate on the inside of the hat. And it's a big plate. I mean, it's all the way down to the bottom. A lot of weld surface area here, so I'm not too worried, about that. I, am not welding it the way that it would typically come. And so I kicked that out, and you can see that, that internal plate is pretty big, and all got a lot of surface area weld to the bottom and everything. So, I did have to extend that, and in order to get that hat out farther enough. The goal is between your, top hat, that you'd have like at least 35 inches between the towers. And I'm going to be probably like 35.5 or so. And so that's looking pretty good for me. Also got it set right here in the center, and I'm right at 0 as far as the front hub. And so I do have a lot of play here where, when I get this thing aligned, like toe and camber and everything, should have a lot of play to be able to move that wherever it needs to in order to get that alignment set. So this is looking pretty good. Again, you could see my gaps there, super tight up against the frame. I got plenty of weld area that I got, so this is looking pretty good. So this is just temporarily held in place. And then what I'll end up doing is cutting that hat off. Now that I know exactly where that thing lines up everywhere, I'll end up, cutting out those little tacks there, and then, you know, boxing in the cross member, and, you know, get that all boxed in, and then put the hat on. And after I get the hat on, I'll box in the top of the hat as well. So, you know, I don't want this stuff open. You know, if we look on this side, you know, obviously I don't want that all open, you know, just getting dirt and crap and debris up in there, which is, you know, what ends up rotting out stuff. So I gotta take that off, get the cross member boxed, and then once I get this in place, I can finish weld the cross member and then get the hat back on, make sure everything's fine after I've done welded the cross member, and then I'll box this in as well. So I'll tie this hat, the top of the hat, into the frame, and get that nice, you know, triangulation boxing of all that stuff in and make sure that's real strong. You can see that I'm up on just jacks right now, but you can see as far as fitment, that's looking real good. I mean, my spindle is, you know, nice and square right in the middle. You know, I got plenty of room all the way around. And so, yeah, I mean, so far, looking really good. I got a crap load of work left, but this first one was definitely going to be the most challenging, is to figure out all that geometry and everything. You know, was definitely going to be the hardest part, and I was real nervous because you could, you know, I didn't want to cut it too much and then have a big old mess on my hands. But, you know, so far this is looking good. I'll probably leave this exactly the way that it is, end up doing the passenger side, make sure all that stuff looks good. And then after I get that all done, it's just a bunch of finish welding and gusseting in order to get that finally set in place. So, all right, that's it for this one. Thanks.